The November wind howled like a warning as William Thornton stepped out of his sleek black Mercedes, his leather shoes clicking sharply on the cracked pavement. He rarely came to this part of the city, especially not in person. But this building, a faded gray structure with rusted railings and chipped bricks, had been on his mind for weeks. Apartment 4C hadn't paid rent in 3 months, and William, a real estate mogul worth millions, wasn't in the business of leniency. His assistant had begged him to let the management team handle it. But something in the tenant's file, a lack of complaints, a history of timely payments, a single mother listed, made him curious. And William didn't ignore curiosity. He adjusted his navy trench coat and started up the narrow stairwell. The hallway smelled faintly of old paint and childhood. Faded murals of stars and cartoon animals lined the walls, remnants of a better time. He knocked on 4C, firm but polite. No answer. He was about to leave a notice when the door creaked open. A boy, maybe 7, stood there in mismatched socks and an oversized hoodie. His hair was tousled, eyes deep brown and cautious. "Mom's at work," he said quietly. "You can come in if you want." William hesitated, then stepped inside. He expected mess. Clutter. Neglect. What he saw made him pause mid-step. The small apartment had been transformed. In the corner, a hospital bed. Beside it, oxygen tanks. The walls were decorated with drawings, dragons, stars, angels. And sitting beside the bed, eyes closed, was a teenage girl with a shaved head, holding a teddy bear and an M4 drip. William didn't move. His world, full of numbers and contracts, had just collided with something real. William stood frozen just inside the doorway, the quiet hum of medical equipment now louder than any city noise. The boy, whose name he hadn't even asked yet, tiptoed across the room and gently adjusted the blanket over the girl's legs. "She didn't stir. She's sleeping," the boy whispered. "Chemo days make her tired." William swallowed. The air felt thick. "Your sister?" he asked, voice low. The boy nodded. "Her name's Lily. She's 13. He picked up a half-drawn sketch of a unicorn from the coffee table and added, "She likes to draw when she's awake." William looked around. The apartment was clean, not just tidy, immaculately cared for. Every item had its place. A small whiteboard listed medication times, and sticky notes with encouraging words were plastered on the fridge. "You're stronger than you think. One day at a time. Lily's fight is our fight." "Where's your mom?" William finally asked. "Work. She's a waitress, double shift today. She couldn't get off. But I'm okay. I know what to do." William's stomach twisted. This child was speaking like an adult. Too responsible. Too calm. He glanced back at Lily, her pale face serene, a soft beeping from her monitor steady and slow. "You came for rent, right?" the boy asked, eyes hopeful but not afraid. "Mom said she'd talk to the manager tomorrow. We're not trying to skip." William opened his mouth, then closed it. He had walked in expecting excuses or lies. Instead, he had walked into a war zone. Not one with bullets, but battles all the same. "I'm not in a rush," he said at last. "I just wanted to check in." The boy smiled faintly. "Most people don't." William took a deep breath. Something inside him had already begun to change. William sat on the edge of the worn-out couch, the cushion sinking deeper than expected. Across from him, the boy, Daniel, poured him a glass of tap water as if he were an honored guest, then returned to coloring silently at the floor table. Lily stirred slightly in her sleep but didn't wake. William's eyes roamed the room, pausing on a faded photograph taped to the wall. A smiling woman, mid-30s, hair in a messy bun, flower on her cheek, stood between 2 children. All 3 were laughing. Happy. Hold on, he hadn't thought about his own mother in years. Not since the funeral. She had worked 3 jobs, held their broken family together with the threads of love and exhaustion. She died before he made his first million. He hadn't cried then. Not really. Success was his grief. Numbers were safer than emotions. Your sister's drawings, William said suddenly, gesturing to the wall where several were displayed. They're beautiful. Daniel beamed. She wants to be an illustrator. Like for books. Mom said after she gets better, they'll send her portfolio to publishers. There was no if. Only when. A child's hope was relentless. What about school? William asked that I go in the mornings. A neighbor checks in on Lily. Then I come home and help with meds and meals. Mom says I'm her right hand. William nodded slowly. The boy had the composure of someone twice his age. Too much burden for such small shoulders. Just then, a kettle whistled softly in the kitchen. Daniel leapt up. I'm making tea. Mom always makes chamomile on long days. William watched him disappear behind the doorway. He had come for rent. To enforce a rule. Instead, he sat in a room filled with quiet courage, and it rattled him more than any boardroom ever had. The aroma of chamomile tea wafted through the room, wrapping William in a strange comfort he hadn't known he missed. Daniel returned, balancing two mismatched mugs carefully. One said, "Best mom ever," the other had a chipped snowflake design that I don't know if you like tea, Daniel said, handing him the snowflake mug. But it helps on hard days. William accepted it, awkwardly. He wasn't used to being cared for, especially not by a child. They sat in silence for a few moments, sipping slowly. Outside, the city moved on without them, but inside, time felt paused. Then, the front door creaked open. "Danny," a tired voice called out, "In here, Mom." Daniel replied, springing up. Carol Hansen stepped into the room, her waitress uniform wrinkled, hair escaping its ponytail. Her eyes locked with William's, her expression immediately wary. She glanced from him to her children, her body subtly shifting into protective mode. "That I didn't know we had company," she said cautiously, placing her purse on the table. William stood, setting down his mug. "Mrs. Hansen, I'm William Thornton. I own the building." Her face fell. "I told the office I'd be in tomorrow. I just need a few more days. I didn't come to collect," he interrupted gently. "I just wanted to understand." Carol blinked, unsure how to respond. Daniel rushed over, tugging at her sleeve. He saw Lily. "He's nice, Mom. He even said her drawings are beautiful." She looked over at her daughter, still sleeping peacefully, then back at William. Her eyes softened slightly. "I don't want sympathy, Mr. Thornton," she said firmly. "We've never asked for it. We just need a little time." William nodded. "I'm not offering sympathy," he replied. "I'm offering respect. And maybe, a conversation." Carol pulled off her shoes and sat beside Lily's bed, brushing her daughter's hair gently with her fingers. The fatigue in her body was visible, but there was a quiet strength in her posture. William remained standing, uncertain of how much space to give her, yet unwilling to leave. Daniel sat back down and resumed his coloring, humming softly as if this scene was perfectly normal. "Lily was diagnosed last spring," Carol said without looking up. "Stage 3 lymphoma. We caught it late. I quit one of my jobs to be home more. That was the first time we missed rent. I called your office, but I guess the story never made it up to you." William nodded slowly. It hadn't. What had reached him was a line on a spreadsheet, Unit 4C, 3 months behind. "I see numbers," he admitted. "Reports, data. But I didn't see this. I didn't see you." Carol looked at him then. Her eyes were exhausted. "Yes, but fiercely alive. Most people don't," she said. "They see a struggling family and assume failure. But we're not failing. We're fighting. There's a difference." Her words struck deep. William felt the shield of his wealth and status crack ever so slightly. "I never wanted charity," she continued. "Just time. I pick up extra shifts when Lily's in treatment. Daniel, he's a warrior. More than any kid should be. I hate that he's had to grow up so fast. William's gaze shifted to the boy, still focused on his sketch. He reminds me of someone I used to be, he murmured. Carol tilted her head. You? He nodded, slowly. My mother cleaned houses. I made a promise to her, to get out. To never struggle again. But maybe I forgot what the struggle really looked like. The apartment had grown quiet again. Lily stirred slightly but didn't wake. The soft hum of the oxygen machine was the only sound, steady like a heartbeat keeping the family going. William sat back down, this time on a small wooden chair near the wall, his eyes fixed on a sketch Daniel had taped up. It showed a little girl riding a winged lion across the stars. In her hand, she held a sword made of light. That's Lily, Daniel explained proudly, noticing William's interest. She says cancer's the monster. But in her stories, she always wins. William blinked hard, forcing back something rising in his chest. These people weren't victims. They were warriors, just like the ones he and his mother had been, just fighting a different kind of enemy. Carol glanced at the clock. I need to start dinner. It's not much, but you're welcome to stay, Mr. Thornton. He hesitated. No one had invited him to dinner without a reservation or a contract in decades. But he nodded. Only if you call me William. She smiled faintly, the first hint of warmth since her arrival. As Carol moved to the kitchen, William rose and walked over to her slowly. Look, he said, pulling a folded paper from his coat. This is the notice I was supposed to give you. About the rent. Her body stiffened. He held it out, then gently tore it in half. We're going to restructure things. No eviction. I can offer a deferred payment plan. 0 interest. And, if you're willing, there might be work for someone with your eye. Carol stared at him. Work? In our staging department, he explained. You clearly have a sense of detail. My team could use that. She looked down at her hands, then back at him. Dignity, she whispered. That's what you're offering. He nodded. Yes. That's exactly what I'm offering. The next morning, William arrived at his office but couldn't focus. The usual whirlwind of meetings, market trends, and development pitches felt hollow. The city skyline stretched outside his window, a symbol of everything he'd built, yet for the first time in years, he felt small within it. He called his assistant. Pull up the Hansen file, he said. Which Hansen? She asked, confused. Carol. Unit 4C. A pause. She's one of our overdue tenants, the assistant replied cautiously. Are you authorizing eviction? William closed his eyes. No. I'm authorizing an opportunity. He gave instructions, detailed ones. A new payment plan, flexibility, an invitation for Carol to shadow their interior staging team. Also, he added, have someone send a small grant to the account anonymously. Label it, Medical Assistance Fund. No names attached. His assistant was quiet for a beat. Yes, sir. After hanging up, William stared at a framed photo of his mother on his bookshelf. She wore a plain uniform and a tired smile, her arm wrapped tightly around a young, defiant William. He remembered her late-night whispers when she thought he was asleep, you're going to rise above all this. But don't forget where you came from. He hadn't forgotten. He had just buried it under years of success, steel, and distance. Later that week, he returned to the apartment, not in a suit, but in jeans and a sweater. Lily was awake this time, frail but smiling, a pencil in her hand. She handed him a drawing. It was a man in a long coat holding hands with 2 children under a star-filled sky. That's you, she whispered. You look lonely. So I gave you company. William couldn't speak. Some investments weren't made with money, some changed you, forever. Carol hesitated outside the staging department's office, nerves tightening her chest like a vice. She smoothed her apron, no longer her waitress uniform, and took a deep breath. This was unfamiliar territory, a new chapter she hadn't dared to imagine. Inside, a team was busy arranging furniture, selecting fabrics, and planning layouts. The manager, a kind woman named Rebecca, greeted Carol with a warm smile. "Welcome. We're glad you're here." Carol glanced toward William, who was quietly observing from the corner. Their eyes met, and he nodded encouragingly. "Don't worry," Rebecca said gently. "We'll help you get comfortable." Over the next few hours, Carol discovered a hidden talent. She arranged pillows with care, matched colors instinctively, and even suggested ideas that impressed the team. Her hands, once tired from long shifts, moved with a fresh purpose. Meanwhile, Daniel and Lily were at school and therapy, respectively. But the family felt lighter, held together by hope and the promise of change. William stopped by several times, sometimes bringing coffee, sometimes just offering a reassuring presence. He could see Carol's determination, and it reminded him why he had made that unexpected visit. At the end of the day, Carol sat by Lily's bed, exhausted but smiling. "Thank you," she whispered to the quiet room. "For believing." Outside, the city buzzed as usual. But inside 4C, a new story was unfolding, a story of resilience, kindness, and the unexpected power of a single act. William had come for rent. What he found was a family's fight, and a chance to make things right. Days turned into weeks, and the apartment buzzed with subtle transformations. Carol's confidence grew, mirrored in the way she smiled a little more, held her head a little higher. Daniel, once burdened by responsibility, found moments to play and laugh. Lily's strength seemed to flicker brighter, even on the hardest days. William checked in regularly, not as a landlord, but as a man who cared. He brought supplies for Lily's care, helped with bills, and quietly arranged for counseling services for the family. Each gesture was small, but together, they built a bridge from despair to hope. One afternoon, Daniel showed William a drawing. It was a comic strip, starring a hero named the Blue Knight, who defeated darkness with kindness and courage. "That's you," Daniel said shyly. "You helped us fight." William felt something swell inside him, pride, yes, but something deeper. Redemption. The news spread quietly through the neighborhood. The millionaire who had once come to collect rent had become a guardian, a quiet force for good. Neighbors who had once eyed the apartment with suspicion now nodded with respect, but William knew the journey wasn't over. The fight for Lily's health continued, and the family's future remained uncertain. What mattered was the promise they all shared: no one would face this alone. As he left the apartment one evening, William paused at the doorway, looking back at the modest home that had changed him. He realized that sometimes, the richest investments aren't made in buildings or stocks, they're made in people, and that made all the difference. Months passed, and the seasons changed. The harsh winter melted into spring, and with it, the heaviness that once hung over the Hanson family began to lift. Lily's treatments were showing progress. Her smile was no longer just a flicker but a steady light. Daniel was back to being a carefree kid when he could, and Carol was no longer overwhelmed by despair but fueled by hope. William stood outside the building one bright morning, watching the family leave their apartment together. Carol carried a small bouquet of flowers. Daniel was chasing Lily playfully down the hallway. He felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of fulfillment he hadn't expected from a visit meant to collect rent. Inside his pocket was a sealed envelope, a small gift for Carol and her family, to help with the upcoming months. No strings attached. Just a thank you for reminding him of what truly matters. At that moment, a neighbor approached him. "Thank you," she said softly. "For everything." William smiled, realizing that kindness, once sown, grows in ways money never could buy. He turned and walked away, the city bustling around him, but his heart quieter, fuller. The millionaire had come for the rent and found something priceless instead: humanity, and that changed everything.